discussed in your group too, while you're thinking for a question. Maybe while you all are percolating on that, I'll throw out a question to the three of you. What's something you've seen from somebody else in the community that they've done, that you've seen make a difference, that you've seen make a dent on this issue of gun violence? And I'll pass along the microphone to whoever feels inspired to answer that.
It's only because I sat closest to you, isn't it?
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I've been here before. There are so many things that I've seen, that has really shown us that we're making an impact on our block. First of all, we've had the sharpest drop in gun-related violence of any census tract in the city that's not being gentrified. So that means no additional resources are going into the neighborhood, but some kind of way, the level of gun violence is coming down and the neighborhood school is actually improving. So it must be a correlation between the three. Something is happening there. So we're just gonna keep doing it because one can't pinpoint exactly what the one thing is. So we're just gonna keep doing everything that we do. But we've seen young people actually intervene with other young people in very violent situations. And it's been times when guns have come out and one guy will tell another guy, hey, no, we don't do that over here anymore. So why don't you do it over here anymore? It's really, okay, it's still terrible that guns came out, but the fact that one young person can tell another one, we don't do that here anymore. Anymore since when? Anymore since the neighborhood changed. When you give people respect and you treat people like human beings, the darndest thing happens. They behave like human beings. Nobody wants to die. Nobody wants to kill. It's not fun. And so when you give kids options, when you give them an out, they will take it. So we've seen a lot of that, and I'm really, really proud that, nobody is, sometimes you get a thank you, but how often do kids really thank mothers for anything? Never. But the thank you is, we've been to far more graduations than we have funerals. That's the thank you.
Questions from other folks out there? See one back there.
Thank you. So I'd like to actually turn the question on the table around to the panelists, right? So the first question, I want to hear each of you talk about this, because I think it's important. And I'm actually going to start with the second one because we didn't have an opportunity to talk about the second one at our table. I'm very interested. Is there anything in your own spiritual beliefs that you draw upon for guidance for how we as a community, as community members, can do something to address violence in Chicagoland? So please, if you could each just kind of reflect on that question.
We at our table, we just said, we checked it off and we were talking about the first one, right? So we got it done. So we were talking about our own spiritual traditions. But actually, as you bring the question, what's your name, sir? What's your first name? Omar. Thank you. I'm a member of an organization called the Community Renewal Society, which is 70 plus member congregations around the metro area. It's all different denominations of Christians, and we're organized to address institutional racism and poverty, and thereby also violence. So we have many different organizers who've addressed issues, whether it's gun violence or poverty, prison reform. And for years, and I know probably some of you here have been involved in this, we worked on the ceiling bill that was passed this last summer for nonviolent felons so that they don't have to check the box. And I know that the state of Illinois is behind in that, but those of us who've been on the ground for years fighting for that, when that news came through, we all gave such thanks and praise. And I would say that as a Christian organization, we had many events where we prayed and we quoted Jesus. But I actually think it was the message of Jesus calling us to reach outside of our own community. In other words, when Jesus would go outside of his own community and remind his own followers of the belovedness of all people, that when we cooperated with other groups on this bill, when we reached outside and worked with our Jewish sisters and brothers, and Muslim sisters and brothers, and ethical humanists, and everyone who had to come together to agitate and change the facts on the ground so that we could move that forward. I believe that if we are true to our own tradition, in the way I interpret mine, it will naturally send us outside our doors to cooperate with others to make changes on the ground to deal with these issues. Just something off the top of my head.
I'm gonna cheat look at the question. Okay, everything from your own spiritual beliefs that you draw upon for guidance. I think, for me, man, I think it's and I kind of talked about it, in my talk. This notion of stories, because there was a time in the Prophet Muhammad's life where it was the time of sadness, and he had just lost his uncle. A lot of events were taking place, and God used stories from other prophets, right, to center him, to begin to refocus. And I think for me personally, having the pleasure to really work with a population of returning citizens, we have a Green Reentry program that has a workforce development component that focuses in on housing restoration, taking vacant properties and rehabbing them, and also training them in HVAC, and training them in carpentry, and training them in electric, and getting EPA certified. And when I think about these men who've already completed 8 projects, and I've had the opportunity to sit down and talk about how through those projects, they talked about gaining their humanity back, right? Getting their humanity back by seeing something that they participated in. And then when I think about one of the properties specifically, it was a property that was adjacent from a school, right on the corner, right next to a block where a man sits. And what it took to actually get that building, to get that 3-flat building, was unconventional. That through an ordinance at the city level that had never been done, nobody had ever used this ordinance, and we went down, with our Jewish congregation. We went down with Father Tony from the St. Rita's Parish. Went down with some of our community leaders from the Muslim community, and we showed up in court about 35 deep every time. When they would call the address for this building, we would all stand up. And so the judge stopped and paused and said, "I have never seen nothing like this ever. You all must be really serious about this space," right? Because again, this was a space that was terrorizing the block. It was making it hard for elementary school kids to go back and forth. And the fact of the matter is that these brothers helped to stabilize this block with a property that now is seen as one of the safest blocks in our 10-mile radius. It's something that is truly inspiring when I get to talk to those individuals who participated in that.
Well, I don't have any Jewish friends. I have a couple, but I'm just they're new. They're new. They're just coming in, right? And so when I decided that we had to do something, it was just, there was this mother that was murdered on 74th and Stewart. She was breaking up a fight one night, got shot. So you can't say she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, because a mother breaking up a fight, that's kind of what mothers do. So we can't let mothers start believing that breaking up fights can get you killed. So that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for me. It was time for me to do something. Everybody has their moment. That was my moment. And I tell this story all the time, and this is honestly how it went down. I got all my friends together. None of them are Jews. I am. I got them all drunk. And I was like, "Hey, we're going to go sit on this corner tomorrow." And it was like, "What? We're going to do what?" And I'm like, "Keep drinking. You're still asking questions." And so I got pink. We had these hot pink t-shirts, and we were going to go sit on this corner across the street from where this woman had been murdered, right? And so, I still don't think any of them even understand why we did that, but they get it. It made sense. It makes sense. But we got some hot dogs. We went and sat on this corner in these hot pink t-shirts across the street from where a woman had been murdered 3 days before we got out there. And people in the neighborhood, young people, thought we were nuts. No. First they thought we were the police. That's what they thought first. Then they thought we were crazy. And then it was like, this one is running around asking for hugs. It's definitely something not right about these people. And we were giving away free food. Free hugs and free food. Everything was free. right? Nobody could understand why we were giving away anything for free, because no one gave away anything for free. Human, just random acts of kindness just did not exist to them, period. Because nobody did anything out of the kindness of their heart for people on 75th and Stewart, for people on 74th and Harvard. Nobody ever did anything like that. They'll be here for a day or two and then they're gone. That's what they thought. In 4 days, how badly starved the community was for love and attention. 4 days. Everybody, I knew everybody's name and everybody knew my name. I got so many hugs. I'm not even a touchy-feely, huggy, kissy person. But I hug 50 people every day because they needed that. And it was all based on the principle of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh. All Israel for each other all the time. And the thing about that is, I learned that in the Jewish community. All Israel for each other all the time. Well, Israel didn't really need it, but black folks did. So what I did was, I took my Jewish teaching and my Jewish learning to the block. That's what I did. And now, that's what I give my friends. And that's what my friends give their friends. And that's what my friends' friends give their friends. That's how you pay it forward. That's how you build community. So it's not about talking to anybody about being a Jew. It's about showing them what being a Jew is about. And that's what I do. So that's how I brought my spiritual beliefs into my work. And that's what's made the difference.
Can I say something real quick? Hey, can we give it up for her tomorrow? Not in a very cynical way. I mean, 75th and Stewart. I mean, she's being super humble, but 75th and Stewart was probably, at the time, I would say about 5, 6 years ago, was one of the hottest spots in the city. And it was them who helped to subside the violence on that corner. So I want y'all to give it up to Tamar. Give it for Tamar.
Do we have any other questions out there? All right, I see one back there.
Hello, my name is Maxwell. I had a question. First of all, thank you guys for coming out. Pleasure to hear from you. I had a question about the use of the word gun violence. I guess rhetorically, in my own personal opinion, I understand that probably like 90 or 80% of the homicides in Chicago happen due to gun violence. But I wonder your opinion on the use of gun violence instead of just violence. It kind of makes it seem as if this is only a gun issue and not a violence issue. In my own thoughts, it kind of separates us to those who say, well, I'm for the gun, but against the violence. So if you tell me gun violence, then I'm torn there because you're trying to take something away from me. So can you just speak to the use of the word gun violence, your personal thoughts, and so on and so forth about it?
Thank you for that question. I'm going to make you kick this one off. You haven't kicked one off yet.
Wow, y'all actually gonna have me try to come after that? I mean, that is a very philosophical question. The use of gun violence. Like, when I think about what you saying, when I hear it, what does it make me think? Maxwell?
I'm thinking more the usage of the word, the way the word functions, whether it be in the news or why I asked that is last week I had a protest, and when the news wrote about it, they said the community comes together against gun violence, but I never used the term gun violence, so it got me thinking, where is this term coming from? And I wanted to kind of hear, and then I'm seeing it being used, and it got me thinking, like, where is this gun violence coming from? Because I fight against violence as a whole. Right. So I just wanted to know your opinion on it. Do you think, how do you think that word is really being used? Because personally, I feel like it's slightly, tearing people, but just your opinions.
Well, I mean, I think in the context and community, I think when you frame it like that, I think about it from this notion of like how it racializes groups of people, right? So if the act of violence has anything to do with black folks, then it's gun violence, right? It's not structural violence. It's not. It doesn't have anything to do with right the war on nutrition. Right, the fact that there's not enough nutrition in our communities. It doesn't talk about all the other environmental factors that are at play. But I think because we use gun violence in these communities, it's the simple fact that, I mean, let's be real, there are a lot of guns flowing through these communities, right? And I always use the analogy that, people on the south and west side, they can get guns more than they can get tomatoes, bananas, apples, right? They get access to guns because of the seamless flow of a particular place that it's coming from, right? That how many guns are entering in our city. And I mean, even when you hear the guys talk about it, like, man, what they do? Did they just load a crate up and drop them off in each hood and then left? And so, I mean, and I was just talking with my friend about this, like, in America, I mean, it's so many guns that for every adult, you can average 6 guns for every adult, right? If you take each adult in America, we can have access to 6 guns. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, this notion that, man, I think people in our communities are not torn by the issue of gun violence because they use guns for protection. They see guns as protection, and they don't think about it from this fact of Second Amendment. They don't think about it as like this is a policy issue. This is politics at play. It's just the fact that I exist in a world that I'm protecting myself, and so I have to carry a gun. Right, and that's the thing that gives me power. But I think in my world, Maxwell, man, that I think when I hear the term, it's automatically racialized because of the access of weapons that happens that folks get in these neighborhoods.
I think gun violence is kind of dog whistle kind of thing, because the other day you heard about a shooting in Kentucky in some kind of way. Sarah Sanders got up and said something about gangs in Chicago. The two have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah, we're always in it.
It's always when someone shot people at a concert in Las Vegas, some kind of way, magically, the gangbangers on the South Side had something to do with that. It always goes back to Chicago all the time. That's gun violence. Chicago is the epicenter of gun violence. That's because it's black folks here. That's what it's about. You hear about violence, but you want to talk about Chicago, it's gun violence. So it's all, I asked when you were asking your question, I asked my brother right here, how many black folks was at your rally? Because if they saw too many black people, that's why it was gun violence. Because everybody automatically assumes that it's gun violence, because it's a trap, because we are exposed to guns. You can get a gun from McDonald's on 55th and Wabash. Are you serious? You can get guns from the corner store, any of the corner stores pretty much, on the south side, maybe even on the west side. It's no secret where they come from, so everybody should have a gun. Why don't y'all all have guns? People don't understand it. If I say I don't want to conceal carry, I don't want to carry a gun because I believe in God. God has protected me this far, so hey, I don't need a gun. Are you crazy? You sit out on the corner every day. But the assumption is that all of us have guns, because how do you live in a place like that and survive if you don't have a gun? Because that's what keeps you safe, right? So that is the assumption. When people see us, especially people from the south and west sides of Chicago, they want to know, where's your gun? Where do you keep it at? That's what they want to know. That's how that works.
I have a follow-up question for you, Maxwell. So I'm assuming you're an activist, yes?
That's correct.
So you mentioned how it might play with people who are probably white and are more coming at it from the Second Amendment issue, like to quote Shamar, you talk about a policy. So will you address that? Because you brought that up. So is it that some of the work you're doing is that you're trying to get to that Second Amendment community to move the needle in terms of the issues that you're concerned about? Is that what you're asking about, the way it works, the way the term works?
Yeah. I guess it's because I was seeing it on the literature, on the website when I was, when I was coming here, and like you're saying, for me, we live in a pretty divided time, and personally, I try my best to tiptoe towards, the other's opinions and see how we can meet in the middle and see how we're saying the same thing just in a different language. And personally, I just feel that I was used in the news to use me to talk about an issue. And I just maybe want us to think about ways in which we use language and we're being manipulated politically to discuss things. And I just, was curious about that, and maybe a thought for anyone else, because for myself, once again, I'm against violence, and particularly for myself, and what I fight for is the innocence of children, the violence predicated on them. So when I look at violence, I don't look at it as, like you're saying, you're talking about a system, you're talking about housing, you're talking about education. That's what I look at as the structure. I look at the gun being at the end point, as after those things have failed me, then I reach out and I take that particular action. So, once again, it's just my observation in that political tool, used, and I personally am trying to be more cautious now of it, and I just wanted to kind of put it out there as well.
I mean, I think it's a fantastic question, coming from an activist, like you said, if you're trying to move, that other community, then I think it's a really important question. In Alinsky style organizing, we call it cutting the issue, which you might have been training, or how do you cut the issue, which I think if we were just honest, we would say it was marketing. That's really what we're kind of doing, is how do we market this issue so that we can move the largest number of people to either vote for this piece of legislation or, turn out in these different ways. I don't know how many of you are familiar with George Lakoff. He was an advisor for the Obama campaign, and he was all about this kind of thing. He said, don't call it entitlements. Call it an earned benefit. Because as soon as you call it an entitlement, you play into the propaganda of the right. So he was always, he's about this sort of social psychology. So I think your question is spot on. We have a group in Evanston called Evanston for All that we formed after the election, and part of it is the solidarity response team where we're training ourselves about how to deal with ICE raids and various issues in the communities that are targeted. But we also formed a group called Uniting Voices, where we're trying to reach across the divides of polarization, because we know it's not in the politicians' best interest or the media's best interest for citizens to come together and try to hash these out. We realized that we wanted to hold dialogues with conservatives. Well, guess what? Conservatives don't like that word. Like we learned, as soon as they hear dialogue, they think it's some lefty-loosey thing that they're not going to come to it. So once we did our research, we figured out they like the word debate. Well, we don't like the word debate. Well, no, that's not touchy-feely enough for us on the left, right? So we found this word conversation. And it's what you said, Maxwell. It's the same damn thing, really. I mean, it's not, it's what we're after. We just had to find the right way to cut the issue to bring people to the table. So whether it's what we're doing or what you're doing, I think it's the right question to continue to ask. But also, as you both pointed out, context is everything, right? What community are we trying to move, and who's going to hear it, and what integrity does it have? I think all those questions obviously are in play. Well, anyway, keep up the good work. Thank you. Good question.
We have time for one more question. I know we could probably do this all night long, but one more question. I think I saw someone over here.
Yeah.
Must be a burning question.
I just, I was wondering, picking up on Maxwell's question, whether you thought that the focus on guns, in particular, and gun legislation, distracts from the root causes of the problem at all. Because what I'm hearing you say a little bit is that guns are a symptom and not the cause. And so sometimes I get worried that we're maybe not focusing on the right issue. Or is there a way to change language so that a part of our conversation on guns is also about solutions for the root causes of violence?
So I'm going to let you kick that off, because I heard you when he was talking earlier along those lines saying that's genius.
If I bite your stuff, don't say nothing, okay? It didn't come from you, it was mine.
We'll actually be working together soon.
Thank you, because I'm gonna definitely borrow that, thank you. I used to think that way. I did. When we first started MASK, I used to think that way. But I could not have more respect for my sister Maria and for Sarah and for what they do. Because what they do, it helps too. There are different levels to this. And everybody can't work on every level. And it's kind of like when I'm sitting out there on the corner on 75th and Stewart, there are a lot of people who are scared to come down there. And it's women from communities like this who aren't used to life on the South Side. And they can't come and make a dent the way that we have. They can't have the same relationship with the people in the community the way that we do. Everybody has to play their part. Gun violence is a huge, huge problem. It's huge. And for it to just be on one group of people to solve this whole problem would be completely unfair. And it would be insane. Everybody has a part to play in this. Everybody has a role. Everybody is important because the problem is so big and in so many different ways that it has to be tackled. Until we can stop the guns, we have to change how our kids see guns and what they use them for and why they use them. We have to attack all of these things. So everybody is important. And if we can't do what we do without what you do, you can't do what you do without what we do. So we really have to tackle this issue together.
Yeah, for me, I think about, from that question, I think about a campaign that we're working on around corner store intervention. We actually got a campaign that we're working with, really trying to take the corner stores and create alternative business models in the way they engage between African-American, predominantly African-American residents and Arab-run stores. And oftentimes people conflate all of the bad stuff because the corner stores are the intersection in our communities. They conflate all of the violence and bad stuff with the corner stores. But it wasn't until we started to humanize the corner store owner and bring him or her to the light and talking about this issue is when everybody started to understand that, oh, so it's not the corner store's fault that it's a food desert. Oh, it's not the corner store's fault that violence or the fact that there's dilapidation in these neighborhoods. And I think that once we begin to humanize the stories of those who've already begin to change their own narratives, who are working to add a center, to add a compass to their lives, and we begin to humanize that even more, I think people will be able to see the issue of violence a little bit differently, and they'll be able to conflate it with the larger structural piece, and not just the simple fact that it's rooted to the point that people just have a gun and they use it. Right? Pulling the trigger is so much more that goes into someone pulling the trigger of a gun. And if we don't begin to really create even more venues like this, where we're talking about the humanization of an issue, then when you start to put faces to it, and this is why in organizing, stories they matter most. We use stories as weapons because you don't understand an issue like immigration until you talk to that Latino grandmother, right, who's scared to death that her daughter or the Latino wife that's scared to death that her husband or son may not come home and they may be deported at any given time. And so that the issue becomes a lot more realer than a 5-second soundbite. When you hear, a mother screaming after she lost her child in the news, right? You don't know that 5-second soundbite until you begin to sit down and we create spaces where stories are being shared and we begin to humanize each other, and then we can begin to understand that the tactic of dividing us using issue areas is just a slick, propaganda tool that they constantly use to divide us all the time.
Yeah. I think I'm going to riff again off Maxwell's question as I respond to yours, because I think that phrase root causes is very telling, isn't it? Because I think what we're about tonight is not root causes, we're about root visions. Amen? And I hear that in what you just said, Tamara, and what you said, Shamara, about the humanization of one another and stories, and how you are calling for, recognizing the work that we all cooperate together. And we were talking about at our table in the small group thing about how we're constantly playing defense in this society right now. We're just reacting to these things that are coming at us. And we have so little time to vision together, to dream together, and to put out a specific, compelling vision that we think will be the best for the most amount of people. And I think that's why it's so important that this moment happens, as you just said, to have more of these moments. Because I'm interested in the root visions. And those powerful stories and how we find the language to not divide ourselves, because as you just said, there's lots of people who just want to see us fighting amongst ourselves. So the root visions is I think what this event is about.
And on that note, I actually think that's a perfect segue to how we're going to close out the evening, which is we're going to invite a few folks out from organizations, including some of your organizations, to come up and briefly tell us about their organization and how you all could engage with that. So thank you all so much. Can we have one last hand for these speakers? And I'm actually going to invite folks to, we're going to sit down here this time to accommodate one of our speakers. So we're just going to pull up some extra chairs. If we're down here, can everybody see us okay? Is that all right? So if I can invite Pam Smith, Maria Pike, Shamar, you can join us in this if you also want to. Or do you have somebody else from Amman here? Oh, great, thank you. And Sarah. So, Pam, let's start with you. You work for an organization called Kingian Nonviolence Training, is that right?
Yes, thank you. Yes, the organization is called the Addie Wyatt Center for Nonviolence Training, and we try to pass along Dr. King's philosophy and methodology of active nonviolence. You know, like how do we practice nonviolence, but in an active way, really confronting the issues that need to be confronted while holding out the vision for, as we all know, Dr. King referred to as the beloved community. So we work in schools, we work in communities, we've trained lots of young people at Kelly Library in Inglewood and in North Lawndale and other places. So.
Perfect, thank you. And Alia, could you tell us a little bit about your organization and what you do there?
Sure. So, Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you all. My name is Alia Bilal. You've already heard a bit about my organization. I work for IMAN, the Inner City Muslim Action Network, which is where my colleague Shamar, who has absconded from the room, works for as well. And we are a nonprofit community organization based on the south side of Chicago. And we work to foster health, wellness, and healing in the inner city. And for us, that looks like direct service, it looks like community organizing, it looks like cultivating arts and culture in neighborhoods that scarcely get to see much, not only expression, not only hope and life, but have access to the avenues and the conversations around how they can actually make their lives and their communities better places. And so, we run a community health center, we do community organizing around issues like Shamar talked about in terms of food justice and access to healthy food. We work to bridge communities that have been pitted against each other for decades. We work to inspire people to reimagine, and as we like to say, to radically reimagine the world as it could be. And we do that with our brothers and sisters from all over the city, from all walks of life, from all backgrounds. If you're ready to work, we're ready to work with you.
Thank you. And Sarah, tell us a little bit about your organization.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Kniznik, and I'm an organizer with the Illinois Council Against Handgun Violence. 2.5 years ago, ICHV, my employer, started something called the Illinois Gun Violence Prevention Coalition. Until just the last 6 months, that organization was growing steadily, but in the last 6 months, it has really just taken off like a rocket. The Illinois Gun Violence Prevention Coalition 6 months ago consisted of about 90 rather small organizations throughout Chicagoland that are interested in working together to reduce gun violence through gun safety legislation. In the last 6 months, we've taken that from a membership of 25,000 statewide to a membership of over 175,000. And that has been possible because of the extraordinary interest in people like you who've come out tonight, people who are interested in making their voices heard among their elected officials. And we're really excited because we're getting stronger every day. And our goal is to advance gun safety legislation in Illinois to reduce gun violence, which I think I'll speak a little bit more about our current initiative in a moment. Thank you.
And Maria, you're from an organization we've already heard a little bit about, but you're also from another organization called Moms Demand Action. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, well, I'm going to be short on Moms Demand Action. I'm a member of the Survivor Network. That means that we are, our children were killed, and we now are working alongside organizations like Daily Non-Handgun against, what is it?
Illinois Council
Against gun violence. Yeah. But I am a member of MASC, and MASC is very dear to my heart because it actually is very grassroots. We have been working for the last 3 years on 75th and Stewart. The plans we also have the drawings for the next micro center that is going to be helping the community. So it's a great idea, and I hope it gets copied across the city eventually, in which we're going to be actually helping with STEM classes, with all kinds of help for the kids and the adults as well in the immediate community. We have been very blessed because we have received, through Tamar's efforts mostly, we have received so much help from across the city and all from suburbs and even from out of state. And that is almost a miracle because, the neighborhoods don't tend to come to see what the other neighbors are doing, and they stay on their silos. And we have had so much generosity come our way to this corner on 75th and Stewart, where we basically fried for the first 2 years with the deep sun, and everybody was like almost fainting by the end of the day. But right now, while we're waiting to build the micro center, we have this issue of the 4 schools closings. The last 4 schools was before they closed 5, right? In Englewood, which is a huge injustice. And when we're talking about gun violence, the root causes of violence, we also have to talk about unfairness in the system. And part of this unfairness is the lack of education, poor education, the food deserts, the housing insecurity, and all these things that exist in these kind of areas. So what is it going to be? How can we help each other at this point? It's going to be, there's nothing this is my personal opinion. I don't think there's much that I can do to stop those schools foreclosing, But what we can do.
What we can do, right?
What we can do
Yes.
is we can actually help alleviate the disenfranchisement of these 437 students that are going to be basically bussed out of the community, and they are not going to be allowed to come to the new school, state-of-the-art school that is being built in the community. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to try to get the funds necessary to give them what they haven't had in the last 3 or 4 years because of the situation with the charter schools. When you have a school, a public school that actually has 13 charter schools around it, and you're asking yourself, why is it that they have a 10% population? You should understand that the charter schools are depleting the funds that should be allocated to the Chicago public school system. And we are actually depriving the most at risk of our children the education that they badly need. They are going to be, these 437 kids that are being disenfranchised will likely, they are very much at risk of falling through the cracks, of getting into, the underground economy, you know what I mean? And they're very likely that some of them are gonna end up in jail. And you ask, and when people say, these kids, are disposable because they're bad kids, they're not bad kids. It's the things that we do to them. It's the things that we as adults should be taking care of for them. So,
Maria, with the things that we should be taking care of and the things that we should be doing,
yes.
With the work you're doing, whether it be on the schools or on the work you're doing on the corner with masks, you have a room full of people here who showed up on a frigid cold night, so clearly care about this issue.
Yeah.
If they want to be involved in your organization, what's a way that they could engage with you or a way that they could help?
Okay, every single summer, we have, we would like you to come to the block and help. You could come and, serve the kids. You could donate. We have a website where, you can sign up and come. Any kind of effort that you can do, you could actually, within your faith communities, you could organize to help us in the issues that, for instance, they don't have, these schools at this moment, they don't have football teams, basketball teams, they don't have arts, they don't even have some classes because teachers don't want to start working in a school that is about to close. So if you have time and you are a former teacher or a teacher that has free time, you are more than welcome to come and help our community. So there are many, many ways where you can help us. The need is there, and we're going to be needing a lot of it. Like for instance, there is a group that is trying to organize 100 students in sports, and one of them called and said, is there a way that we can get CTA bus tickets? Those cards. So there is a lot of need. If you would like to know more about it, we have these little pages, and then just contact us. And there's a lot of things that you can do. You can use 10 minutes of your time during the week, or 4 hours of your time, or 2 days, or whatever you want. It is just that get involved. How we're going to fix our communities is by each one of us getting involved in one way or another.
So that's a great picture. There's information there on the sheet you can hand out. I'm going to move it along so we can hear from the other groups really quickly.
Here's a sign-up sheet.
And there's a sign-up sheet over there that you can get to. Quickly, because we do need to clear out the room soon. Sarah, tell me about how folks could get involved in your organization, what they could do if they wanted to take action.
Thank you, I would really like to do that. So one of my responsibilities at the Illinois Council Against Handgun Violence and the Gun Violence Prevention Coalition is to help support the passage of Senate Bill 1657, gun dealer licensing. The purpose of the bill is to make sure that gun dealers in Illinois are following safe business practices, responsible business practices, and making sure that guns do not end up in the hands of people who should not have them. There are details on this fact sheet about the bill. I'm not going to go into the details because I know we don't have much time. On the back is a partial list of the members of the Illinois Gun Violence Prevention Coalition. These are member organizations. If you are affiliated with any organization and are interested in joining, there is no cost, and my job is to make it easy for you and your members to get involved in getting gun safety legislation passed in Illinois. I'm also a big believer in the idea that coalitions are only meaningful if the relationships are two-way. So I work very hard trying to support the missions and goals of our member organizations, and as well as asking them to support our mission and goal. So I also have a business card on the table if anybody would like to join the coalition as an individual, or if any organization that you belong to might be interested in joining, I would appreciate it if you would contact me. The legislation that we're focusing on right now, as I mentioned a moment ago, is the Senate Bill 1657, gun dealer licensing. It passed the Illinois Senate in April of 2017 with bipartisan support. It passed with 30 votes. It needed 30 votes to pass, and the 30th vote was cast by a Republican lawmaker who 1 week before publicly swore that he would never vote for it. On the day of the vote, he changed his mind, and that afternoon wrote an open letter and published it in newspapers across Illinois, stating, "I do not like this bill. I did not want to vote for it, but I heard from so many of my constituents asking me to vote for it that I felt I had no choice."
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'll try to wrap up. The reason I tell that story is because what we need is for people to pressure their legislators their Illinois House representatives to vote for the bill. It will be voted on in April or May. There's an action sheet on your table. There are 3 steps here. The first one explains how you can find out who your Illinois House rep is. And on the right is a box with a script in it. All you need to do is call and read that script, and it would really help us get the bill passed. Finally, there's a petition. There is a petition on your table. This is going to go to Governor Rauner. After we pass the bill out of the Illinois House, we're going to submit 20,000 signatures to Governor Rauner asking him to please not veto the bill. If you could please take one of these petitions home, get 10 people to sign it, and mail it to us at the address at the bottom of the page, it would really help. I happened to run into Governor Rauner in a bar in Springfield in November, and I asked him, "Governor, when we pass Senate Bill 1657 out of the House, will you please not veto it?" He said, well, I'll think about it. So please, let's give him something to think about. Fill out the petition and mail it to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. And could you tell us if people want to be involved in Amman, what are some actions they can take to learn more about your group?
Yeah, so I'll be brief with one invitation to you. We have an event that we hold every Tuesday evening called Grassroots Power Hour. And that is an opportunity to do a little more of what Shamar talked about and what I think a lot of us have talked about. We believe in the power of relationships to really move communities and move our society forward. And without that, coalitions, alliances crumble, because at the end of the day, it's not about the issues, it's about the people behind those issues. And so Grassroots Power Hour is an opportunity for our community, our leaders to get together, to continue to build relationships with each other, to be trained every week in the ways to build power and trained on some of the issues that we're working on. It's a great opportunity for you to come to learn a little bit more about all of the ways that we are trying to reduce violence, that we are trying to foster health, wellness, and healing in the inner city and beyond, and an opportunity for you to meet others that are doing that work and then be mobilized yourself to be involved in it. So I invite you, I'll put the flyers, we'll pass out the flyers are on the table, 5:30 every Tuesday, and 5:30 is dinner, and then 6 to 7 p.m. is a brief 1-hour program.
Okay, 5:30 is Tuesday, flyers on the table. And Sarah, tell us about, Pam, tell us about how people might be involved in the trainings that you do and your organization in general.
Well, thank you. Well, everyone can think about whether they'd like to have the training for themselves. It involves learning the 6 steps of Kingian nonviolence and the 6 principles, which is the moral foundation. But I'd really love for people to think about what young people you think might be interested. When this curriculum was introduced at North Lawndale College Prep, violence in the schools fell 90% within the first 2 years, and it has been sustained over 7 years. So it's a powerful methodology that young people will take on themselves. And even when really challenged, I mean, I was we co-train with young people who are trainers as well. And a student came up to me during the break and said, I just had a really hard time. His house was shot up. And he still showed up at training the next day to pass this methodology on to, other people. And then not too long after that, he himself was shot. And, he's still coming to training, and he's like, I'm not going to retaliate. His biggest concern is how is he going to stop his family members from retaliating? Because he said, I'm not going to let anybody knock me off my square, is how he put it. So, I think the power for transforming schools and communities and individuals, adopting nonviolence as a way of life is really powerful. So, if you know of young people, there are cards on the table in our flyers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for taking some time to come out with us. I'm going to hand the mic over to Danaz to close out the night.
Wow, what an amazing evening. And I really need to say thank you to everyone, especially on this very cold evening, to come out. And a lot of you drove very far distances. A lot of you drove very short distances, but you still came out in the cold. Really appreciate it. And I think it shows the power of stories. And this was not strategically placed, but choosing Shannon from WBEZ, which is so based in stories and how stories create connections and shared stories build relationships, and that's what we really learned today, the power of stories and how it doesn't matter if you're from one area, the other area, but just sitting together at the table, sharing stories about similar experiences we had, sharing stories about our faith, and I wish media would represent that more in what's portrayed on our television on Nonstop. The powerful connections that we just made tonight was hopefully something you'll walk away and share with, when you go back to work tomorrow, when you are in your house of worship. And also getting out of your comfort level. I always think about that. When I went to give work with Tamar about 1.5 years with my 16-year-old son, I was kind of scared standing there in that corner. I was gonna be honest with you. I was like, oh my God. My husband said I was crazy, and he said, if anything happens to you, just come home with the son. I don't care if you come home, but make sure my son comes home. And I was like, oh God, if anything happens, let it happen to me, not my son. But I was really uncomfortable, and all of us we need to be uncomfortable to make changes. So please make sure you do things out of your comfort zone, because that's what makes it a better world. And that's what makes us better people. So choose one thing that's uncomfortable for you and go ahead and challenge yourself. We're going to end off with a prayer that Pastor Roon's going to help us move the night along with. Thank you.
Thank you, Dilnaz. I don't know if this will get you out of your comfort zone, but I've asked you to rise as you're able, and let's form a big circle together as we can around these circular tables. As we form the circle, I want to give thanks and praise to two of my favorite readings. One is from the Pirkei Avot, from the Jewish tradition, and I think Tamara, you actually referenced it somewhat in your speech. You're not required to finish the work, but neither are you allowed to abstain from it. Amen? And I heard an echo of that when you were speaking so powerfully to us. I hear both grace and challenge in that, you know, and that's what I think we need, is the balance to continue our work together. And from the Quran, one of my favorite passages, and I apologize for the English understanding of it, but as I remember it, it was that, God could have made you one human community, but instead you were made into different tribes and peoples so that you might compete with one another for good works. I think what an evocative concept. And then I think the end of the reading says something, and at the end, God will show you what this all means. And I'm thinking about, Shamar, what you said in our small group about how people are just desperate for a space to be loved and desperate for a space to be understood. And in my tradition, a not often quoted passage of scripture from Jesus is, why don't you decide for yourselves what is right? And here we have a moment to do that together, given everything we've heard and shared. And so if you are from a faith tradition, or you're not, I think it would be good for us to have a moment of silence together and give thanks for this space. And also, in my tradition, we talk a lot about conversion, but I've never experienced it as a one-time thing. I think there are many moments of conversion in our lives. And I pray that this moment right now is a moment of conversion for all of us, in the words that Dilnaz just spoke and everyone that we've heard, that we find a space in our silence to be converted to this work together. So let's just observe a moment of silence together. Shalom, assalamu alaikum, peace be with you. Good night.
Here's the surveys, if you don't mind filling out the surveys, and if you don't mind